session today is from a rapper. His name is No Cap. Song is Comfortable Numb. It's from his album Mr. Crawford. I recorded and did some mixing work on 2 of the songs on that album, and it peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 200. So pretty cool. A bunch of the plugins I use they don't have on these computers, so that'll kind of be to our favor. Sounds kind of rough right now, but we'll kind of work through adding some stuff and touching it up. So this is the raw recording. This is actually missing about 27 plugins that I use.
Wow.
So
That's crazy.
That's
crazy.
Wow.
yeah. So like a big principle I live by is like record like there's no mix like there's no master. That tends to like give you the highest quality product at the end. So I had just like the beat, the producer sent it to me. It's produced by Nico. One of the first things is we gotta open up headroom. So I done clip gained the beat down. I'll show you. This is how loud the original beat was. I'm gonna play it. You can hear like the vocals are almost non-existent. So in order to create the presence, we drag it down enough that now the vocals are kind of on top of it, you know? The quickest way to make your mix or your recording sound distorted is don't leave enough headroom for anything. If your beat's at 0, there's no room to put vocals on top of it. If you slam the vocals on top of it, now you just kind of have like a muddy, mashed together mix, right? So then the next thing as well is like as a recording engineer, you kind of learn to be a producer as well, because I had to make edits to this beat to actually make it make sense in the way that he wanted. Because at least when you have the stems, you can kind of select your sections, move it around. I didn't have that here. Being able to like sync it up to your grid, make sure that you can quickly select this much or however much, and copy and paste that around is pretty helpful. I'll record like my little bar or whatever, and then I drag it down to my tracks here. I have the yellow ones are my lead vocals, my green ones is stacks, so they'll essentially highlight the exact bar that they said. My purple one is for ad-libs, and I also have one called alt vocals. I'll either use this for a second vocalist if they have a feature, or if they have like another take that they liked, but we're gonna go with the other one, I'll kind of drop it down to alt and just mute them for the time being. That way we can quickly reference them. Each of these tracks get routed to these buses. I have my lead vocal bus, my alt vocal bus. This is supposed to be like for stacks, but I rarely do that. I'll send my stacks to my lead vocals to kind of glue them together a little more. And then on the ad-lib bus, that's where this one goes to. The ad-lib bus is made to like create the space and kind of move it around, get it out of the center of focus. I want my lead vocal to be the most present thing, and I want anything else to kind of live around that area.
Hey, I have a question, what is your take on mixing on 2-track?
So I actually do a lot of it. That's one of my strong suits, I feel like. 2-track is not the preferred method, especially with mixing, because you are limited in your control, but if you really know what you're doing, you can kind of finesse it a certain way. And like even in this one, I feel like the bass on this beat was kind of lacking, especially when I turn it down a lot. The quickest way to bring like presence or like attention to something is literally just turn the volume knob up. The louder something is, the more mid-range presence it's going to have, therefore like the easier humans are going to be able to hear. Not to get like super nerdy into the science, but humans can hear from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. 20 hertz being the lowest frequency, 20,000 being the highest. Most humans hear from 400 hertz to 4,000 hertz, the best though. So if you can kind of like work your mix into that 400 to 4K area, it becomes like a lot easier for humans to hear it. The easiest way to do that is literally turn your volume knob up. This actually didn't even have reverb on it because they didn't have the reverb. So the first thing I'm gonna start with is popping reverb on there. I can like briefly explain what my theory is with using the reverb. Typically for a bright vocalist, I choose a dark verb. For a darker vocalist, I choose a bright verb. And it will build like your contrast. So kind of like this plate. We'll roll with it for now.
So you
you choose your reverb based on the song vibe?
I choose my reverb based on the vocalist. Also, like, the song could play a factor. If I want a tighter verb, if I want something that brings it like, you know, that intimacy,
Yeah.
I'll choose something that's like small, close up, and that's cool. If I have like a pretty open song and someone playing guitar, I want it to feel like it's like a unplugged version. I'll use a really big spacious verb to bring that depth and that atmosphere around it. Like in this scenario, I use like a lot of different delays with timing, so that kind of allows to create that space inside of the reverb for me. So I'll use like a medium-sized verb, not too bright, not too dark in this scenario, but you'll hear all the difference, like without verb, it's just kind of boring and in the back, right? And then with reverb, it just brings it forward a little bit. It kind of gives it a space to live in.
Really trying to get more into the engineering side, because you know that's where the money really is. If someone does come with like a YouTube beat, and like I'm trying to fit him inside the music, just like finding some type of plugin that will fit him inside.
It could be both.
Okay.
For me, clip gain, turning it down, that's number one.
Okay.
Once you got the headroom, you can kind of put them on top of it or whatever. Now you got to fit them into the mix. So I'll typically use like EQ, and it's tricky because your drums exist kind of in the same area that the vocals exist. So if you start EQing and reducing a lot, it'll make your drums not hit right. So I'll get like really precise with it, and I'll subtract like 1K, 4K, 10K. Those would be my 3 points, and it might literally be like the smallest little EQ. I'll show you.
Okay.
It might be like the smallest EQ adjustment ever. Like, tighten the Q up, and that might be how much I need to take out to get this much space opened up.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And then in addition, like when it comes to EQ, one frequency affects all frequencies. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that you have a guitar and it sounds really bright. It's like ching ching ching, and you're like, fuck. So you take out these high frequencies. Well, now it sounds muddy, and you get like a from the pick hitting the strings. You're like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't hear that before. It's because now that one frequency is less present, it doesn't make the other frequencies more present, but it does make them perceived more present.
You know, I use FL Studio for my beat making. Try to put the plugins on my Pro Tools, and it's not sounding like how I wanted it to sound. Like, you know, I want my 808 to sound like it's rocking the room. I want my snare or my rim to cut through the mix, or like how I want it to. I just need probably help on what plugins should I use to keep that same roughness that I want.
I don't think it has to do with plugins. Like, I think it has to do with your gain staging and your mixing. So like, if you mix it really good in FL, you export the 2-track beats. Like, I'll give you an example. There was a K-pop song that Murder Beats produced, and I got to like assist on it, and it was for some TV show over in Korea or Japan, I think. And his beat was mixed so good, we were struggling to remix the beat stems as good as he had them, because we're like, what the fuck did he use? So essentially we just ended up going with his beat. Didn't really have to mix his beat, we just had to mix the vocals into it, because what ends up happening is you don't have to do a lot when it's already really good. When your sound selection's really good, when your mixing and your gain staging is really good, there's not a lot more to be done. You might add something for taste. Maybe you want the bass to hit harder, so you put a distortion plugin on it. But the distortion plugin's at like 13%. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, nah, I see
it's not really like we're putting the distortion on there to make it sound distorted. We're just adding a little bit of flavor to it.
So you basically just saying less is more.
Yes. Less is more, but less is always less as well. One of the other things, I'm gonna show y'all what compression will do. Compression on vocals is like my #1 thing. It's really your best friend. One of my favorite compressors is RVox, and I love it because it's so easy. And I'm gonna show you. You literally drag one knob.
Heart on zero.
How much presence does that bring into
I
this?
wanna lean on you and vent to you.
A lot, right? Like, this is where it was.
Hope you forget so they not secrets no more.
And I'm not even gonna look. I'm gonna just listen.
I let my tears in my chains.
It's probably a little bit too much. Back it down.
So much faith, turn my back on God.
Sounds good to me.
I really get to thinking I'm
We'll turn it up.
I'm comfortable now, I'm comfortable now, I'm comfortable. Come out the slums, original ones, but nothing they promise but money and guns and punish. My music might change, but I'm just maturing and ready.
So what compression's doing for you is it's not actually making the quieter stuff louder, but it goes back to the perceived loudness thing. It's making everything above this threshold come down, because you're bringing the loudest stuff to a lower volume. Everything at a quieter volume now feels a lot louder. So compressing a vocal, taking some of the dynamics out is your best friend, but music is all about dynamics. So if you over compress your vocals, then it becomes very difficult to like sound natural. I'll give you one other example. It has to do with de-essing as well, which I use a de-esser right here in my chain. You can see that I'm not getting a ton of attenuation. Just every so often, you'll see it jump down. And the purpose behind this is when you're talking and you use S's and T's, whether I speak at this volume or whether I speak at this volume, my S's and my T's have the same exact loudness. So when you start over de-essing or over compressing, now your S's and T's start sounding unnatural, and that's indicator number one that something's off. Because subconsciously you perceive S's and T's the same no matter what. The whole purpose behind mixing is not to change what you have, it's to enhance what you have. One of the other things I'll do too is like I'll use a saturation plugin. I'll see if I can find something cool to use.
Heart on zero. I wanna lean on you and vent to you.
We'll use lo-fi. This is a stock Pro Tools plugin. This is actually a trick that I got from Drake's Producer 40. You literally put the distortion on 0.1. Don't ask me why, but without it, with it, it just gives it like a little bit of forwardness and presence. And lo-fi itself is kind of like a saturation plugin. I can turn this up too, but you can hear how it starts getting very harsh very quickly. That's why I typically don't do it. Like, as crazy as it sounds, plugins just being on there typically do things.
Change the sound.
Literally, just having it on there will do something. And if you put it in bypass, it still will make a sound difference. And if you put it disabled, that's where you will actually hear the biggest change between it being on there and it not being on there. Most of the time, I'm not using a plugin to do a lot. I'm using a plugin to do a little. That's like the most sauce I can give you. But everything's with intent. Like, oh, I need this a little bit warmer. Okay, I'm gonna throw something on there that's gonna brighten it up a little bit. There's another Slate plugin, Fresh Air. That one's pretty cool.
It's a free plugin, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'll show you what that will do too. Like, you can automatically hear. It starts getting a lot more of that airiness on the high end. Let me turn it up for you.
Heart on zero. I wanna lean on you and vent to you. Hope you forget everything I said to you. Hope you forget so they not secrets. In my chain, but I'm just
C4 or C6. It's a multi-band compressor plugin. The reason why I like multi-band compression over regular compression is because I can control different areas. Earlier how I was talking about too much compression changing your S's and your T's. Well, now I can control exactly how much compression is happening in that frequency range, because maybe the low end of their voice is very boomy. Maybe they recorded this close to the mic, so you have a lot of resonant frequencies, and the effect you get from being too close to a microphone is called the proximity effect. I'm able to control like my mids, my low mids are a lot of what I'm crushing. It's I'm sure you've heard about like curves, creating curves with like your mixes. Like, I like to create the curve in my vocal. Typically that's like a little bit of boost in the high end, and it's a lot of like cutting in the low mids and mid-range frequency. In this scenario, it could probably use a little bit more taming on the lows. And let me put this back. Tell me if you can hear it.
Ain't gotta walk through tears, say that Rolex can't play. I scream for love now, it ain't no more. I can cry, oh shit, my wrist man is a damn short. She asked me did I want some brain, I told her a damn course. Now I got a hook, drop my top when it be raining, take that foreign through the mud. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Hope the devil don't take the wheel, cause it just
The whole purpose of C4 is I'm going to shape it to how I want it to sound, and then every other compressor is just going to give it a little bit more control. They don't have the CLA 76, but I'll show you what something close to that is. Pro Tools has a stock one called the BF76. That's an emulation of the 1176. I know y'all can't see it, but we have two of them in this rack right here. The 1176 is a limiting style compressor. It's really good because it has an attack and a release knob. Like optical compressors such as your LA2A don't have attack and release, which like makes it a little bit harder to control how quickly your compression happens. For a singer, I like a LA2A. Brings a little bit of warmth, brings a little bit of color. For a rapper though, especially if they're I want to be able to control how much is happening, because oftentimes the compressor will just be nailed to the back end and now you're losing all the dynamics of the vocal. So I'll use something like this, and I'll really try to 3 to 5, maybe 7 dB of reduction.
My neck on froze, heart on 0.
And the biggest
I wanna lean on you and
making sure that the needle always returns back to 0. When it's doing this,
you forget so they not secrets no more. I let my tears
that's
in my
way too much compression.
I was losing so much faith, turn my back.
But when it's doing this,
sometimes I really get to thinking I'm comfortable now. I'm comfortable numb, I'm comfortable numb, I'm comfortable. Come out the slums.
It's just taming what is exceeding our threshold. The purpose is to treat what we need to treat and not to treat everything with it. If you do want to do that, that's cool, but that's where you kind of cross over into the realm of limiting.
My question to you is, what do you do as far as your instrumental? Like, let's say before you get to messing with the vocals, you want to, because you produce too. So let's say if you're going and you want to have a good instrumental before, you know, you want to send it to an artist, there's no rapping on it, you know, for the producers in the room, because I don't know who all producers are in this room, like how do you get your instrumental sounding sonically right so that the artist can actually have a good understanding, you know, what he wants to do with it while he's writing to you?
Okay, so 2 techniques. 1, turn everything down. That way you have like kind of some headroom in your mix. Like there's a common trend that Southside from 808 Mafia started, where it's like, don't put a limiter on your beats. Cool, but also don't let your beats like clip and be distorted either. So like you turn everything down a little bit. I still put limiters on my beats so I can get them really loud, because the second piece of advice I have for you is make it as loud as possible, because typically somebody is going to perceive louder as better. If the beat comes on and it's hitting, oh yeah, I'm fucking with this one. Where if the beat comes on and it's kind of weak, they got to turn it up, and now it's introducing a lot of things that, especially, like, not to diss anybody or whatever, but rap engineers don't know what they're doing. So when you make it easy, like, hey, you just got to turn it down and now you can record on it, oh yeah, we can do that. Where if you introduce a lot of things and they're trying to mix your 2-track and this and that, like, they're not really going in depth with it, unless, you know, they have real experience or they're like crossed into that mix engineer realm. Most tracking engineers just record though. That's it.
A lot of people don't know, like, you know, the bass and the kick be fighting, and so producers have, you know, problems trying to figure out how they need to sidechain the kick and the bass. What about that? Because I would like to know better, you know, expertise on that too. Because you know,
me personally, I never do it.
You don't do that?
When I'm mixing, sometimes situational, like also genre of music dependent. Like typically rap, trap, whatever beats, like they're rarely doing that. except maybe if it's getting mixed, like they might, and that's still situational. But like EDM music, that's a very common trend. Sidechain your kick to your 808 because it creates that kind of vibe where it's ducking the bass every time your kick's hitting. That's totally cool.
Right.
Like, it's dependent, you know. Sometimes instead of like sidechain, what I'll do is I'll literally go into my bass and I'll cut the frequency that my kick drum's hitting the hardest at, and I'll go into my kick and I'll cut the bass frequency that I feel like is supposed to be there, and it almost opens up the space for each other to live. Typically my bass is like, let's say 40 to 60 hertz, and my kick is like 60 to 80 hertz, maybe as high as 100 hertz. And I just kind of let them live in harmony together.
Okay.
A little goes a very long way sometimes.
You notice when you get a 2-track and you start to mix, right? Most of the time the 2-track will comes with a limiter. So after you done mix it, after you done mix the 2-track with the vocals, like after you done mix it, do I take it out and go remaster it, or put a limiter, or I mix it in the same session?
What I typically do is I do end up relimiting it. Most of the time, if I go to like a mastering house, is what they call it, like I will send them my rough mastered version so they see where we left off at. Also, demoitis is a very real thing, so the artist has listened to the mix or the recording I've done 750 times before it actually is going to get finished out. So they're already used to hearing it a certain way. Like the mastering engineer is going to add 5 or 10% to what we've done. It's going to get this much louder, the vocal's going to be this much more forward, but it's going to be perceived enough, and it's also going to help to translate from an iPhone to AirPods to laptop speakers, the car, you name it. Mastering, in my opinion, is solely about loudness and translation. As a matter of fact, like back in the day, they had cutting lathes for vinyls, right? And one of the newer cutting lathes in the 80s came out, and you were able to actually make your vinyls like significantly louder. Well, a lot of people didn't believe in it because it was like $100,000 upgrade from most people's regular vinyl cutting lathes. Well, sure enough, they had to start believing in it because people were specifically going to get their records louder because people would, you know, like it a lot better, especially at a lower volume. If you've ever noticed, like you ride on the elevator, you hear the music or whatever, it's not loud, but you can hear everything. You can hear Kenny G playing the saxophone solo, you can hear Mariah Carey's lyrics on All I Want for Christmas Is You. It doesn't matter because they make it so loud that even at a low volume it's loud.
What have you heard about those AI mastering results? You pay a small price, a fraction of the price, and then have you heard good things or bad things?
I would say that it's a good thing.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, probably a better solution than just making some shit up and trying to make it work.
Yeah.
But if you have an understanding of what you're doing and you read like open and wide, that would make me think that they're probably doing mid-side EQ and using some kind of imager on it. So if I could go in and use a mid-side EQ and an imager, I could probably do it better than an AI can do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, AIs are getting fucking smart, and it's really about what you feed the AI. So if it's an AI that has every hip-hop record in history as its like learning curve, you might want to give it a try. Also could be a good way to kind of give that rough to a real mastering engineer, like, hey, this is what I got out of Lander, this is what I want it to sound like.
Yeah.
Or maybe like, hey, this is what Lander gave me and I wasn't really fucking with it, can you do something different?
The main question is, does it matter where you record?
Yes and no. Like, we're getting to the point, like consumer level gear, it's getting pretty close to pro level audio. But the most important thing to keep in mind is when you're recording on a microphone, you're not recording just the microphone. You're actually recording the room you're in. So the more powerful the mic is, the more of the room it's going to pick up. So for example, if you have a mini fridge and you're using a $100 blue microphone with a Scarlett interface, like, you might not really hear it. But if you have a Neumann U87 and a Neve 1073 preamp, you're definitely going to hear that. So it's one of those things, like, just knowing what you're working with, being conscious of it. I would definitely recommend treating the room in some fashion, even if it means hanging up blankets on the wall or, you know, buying the little vocal shields or whatever. I personally hate the Chaotica eyeballs Like, they're cool for like reference tracks, but they just introduce resonant frequencies and shit that, like, imagine doing this around a microphone and being like, yeah, this is what's gonna soundproof it. Like, that's not really how it works.
Okay, so what do you start with? Do you start with your instruments first or your drums? And how do you be inspired to, like, how you even want to do your drums?
I start with drums for sure. Typically 808s, kicks, snares, hi-hats. Once I got those in order, everything else falls into place. It's like the energy of my song. So like I set that as my ceiling and essentially build downward. And then the last thing I'll do is my vocal. So I'll build like the drums out. I'll put all my instruments together. Now I kind of got most of it here. And now I'm going to put my vocal right where I need it to be. If I start with the vocal, it's pretty hard to build everything around it, because by the end, now my drums are louder than the vocal, now the piano's clashing with it, now the guitar has some weird reverby delay sound on it that wasn't competing, and now it's washing everything out. Like, that's why I do my vocals last.
Good beats outside of like BeatStars.
Oh man,
That's a great question.
BeatStars have some good beats.
My best suggestion, honestly, YouTube. Yeah.
Wow, I'm surprised.
And just do what you need to do to negotiate with those producers. Even if you buy the keep this in mind, okay? You buy the $25 lease. You drop the song. You're not planning for it to get 1 million views. But when it does, now the producer has to renegotiate their contract with you. Where if you just steal the beat off YouTube, upload it, gets 1 million views, you have no kind of agreement with them on anything. Therefore, they can just take it away from you. Where at least if you have an agreement and the agreement got violated or whatever, now they have to renegotiate with you.
Just to go off of him, I see like people going on YouTube and I'll be like, there's a lot of people buying this beat. How are they licensing these people with the same beat?
So they all have little different agreements. Definitely read the agreement so you have an understanding. But most of the time, it's going to limit what you can do. It's going to say you can get 100,000 streams on this. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It's going to say you can sell 5,000 physical copies of this song.
Okay.
Like,
That's gonna be it. From that.
that's it.
Okay.
Now, don't get me wrong. Nothing stops you from exceeding that. But if you're making money on it, the producer sees you're making money on it.
That's what I'm
I can promise they're going to come for their money.
Gotcha.
If there's no money to be made, though, why are they going to waste their time or their energy?
Right.
Like, I would say, like, find a producer and y'all build a relationship.
That's probably number one. Relationships is like super important in this industry. Also, who you know. Most engineers work with multiple producers. So if you happen to know an engineer, he can probably connect the dots for you to some of the producers and whatnot. Or like, I know a lot of engineers, myself included, who have agreements with producers worked out where they'll just send me beats. I have like 20,000 beats in my email, and when people are like, you got beats? Shit, I'll play you some beats. But then when that happens, like, they're gonna have to negotiate it or figure out whatever goes on moving forward. Some of the producers might try to hit you for 5K on the beat. Some of the producers might say, yeah, use it.
So what's the difference between MP3, WAV, and like, there's like a third one I can't think of it, but like, what's the difference?
Style PA.
Yeah, what's the difference?
So MP3 is a compressed audio format. MP3s also put a second of silence in the beginning of your songs. So if you import that into Pro Tools, it's supposed to be 156 BPM. You put it to 156 BPM. Now it's not lined up because you have a second of silence in the beginning. Also, WAV is what they call FLAC audio, which stands for full lossless audio codec. So there's no form of compression or like loss in it. So it's like clearer, it's louder, you get like a little bit more clarity by the end of it. And then you also don't have to worry about the 1 second in the beginning as well. So you just drop it in, set your BPM, and everything's lined up.
I noticed like every studio have Pro Tools but not Logic. Like why y'all don't? I noticed y'all don't use Logic like that.
Yeah, so I do use Logic actually. Here they teach Pro Tools. Pro Tools is the industry standard recording program.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in Pro Tools, I can't lie. Like, I started in Logic and I done made the transition. But what I can tell you is I am working with MediaTek on building a new curriculum for a music production program. It's going to be solely based in Logic Pro X. I feel like if you put yourself in one box, like, that's what it is. Like, I've actually learned how to mix rap songs better by doing other genres outside of rap. Because if you just know how to do one thing, it's like, alright, we're gonna bake chocolate chip cookies. We know the exact recipe. Every time we get just about the same product. But once you eat chocolate chip cookies for 7 years, you're like, maybe I want to try another flavor of cookies. And then through, you know, having to, I don't know, come up with whatever the filling or icing or whatever it is, now you're like, hey, I know how to do this. Now you go back and you make a new addition to your chocolate chip cookies and you almost have something new, you know? So it's about like evolving and expanding your skill set and like the different things you have to where you're able to really grow like all around.
Remember you said you did K-pop, right?
Yeah. K-pop's cool as fuck. I love K-pop. I work with a couple producers and engineers who have done like BTS and like some of the big groups over there. Yeah. So, and they have crazy sessions. Like, I'm talking what my mixes look like are what their recordings show up looking like. It's like 700 tracks. Like, next level kind of shit where you're like, what the fuck? Like, but that's why they get the big bucks.
What do you do when you get beat block?
Cool. Listen to a lot of music.
That's what you do?
Look for inspiration.
Because I know we all get that.
Yeah.
I had some of that today.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I ended up coming here.
Mm.
Try to get some more inspiration from everybody. Listen to all the different music and stuff.
Yeah. Sometimes stepping away from music too. That's like the solution. You go do something else. Next thing you know, you're walking down the street and you see a squirrel running across the street. You're like, hey, that was kind of cool. Now you're like making beats about squirrels running across the street. I don't know. Anything can be inspiration. What I can tell you though is I rarely rely on motivation or inspiration to drive me to do things, simply because inspiration comes and goes. You can't always be inspired. But with discipline, that will take you the most. Half the time I'll start making a beat, I'll be like, fuck this beat, delete. I'll just start making a new one. It might take me in the same direction, and I say, alright, fuck this beat too, delete, start another one. But one of the times that I open something up, something's gonna pop off. And the best ones take, I don't wanna say no effort, but minimal effort. They just kind of flow together.